Hey guys, Joe the Tech Guy back here with a special episode this week. For those who are watching, will notice that I am not alone today. I have my friend, good friend, Mr. Michael Jargo, and here we are here. I'm stumbling on my words because I am pretty excited. Last night, we got a surprise announcement from Apple on Halloween Eve, whatever you want to call it. This was... Before we get into the details here, man, just kind of thoughts overall, because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, this might actually be one of the shortest kind of Apple events that they do. I mean, I think that the days of the in-person keynote for Apple, I think, are pretty much gone at this point, which I'm kind of bummed out because I was always a fan of those. But, I mean, it was short, kind of concise to the point here. They just thoughts overall before we get into the details.
Well, number one, as far as like instead of the live keynote, right? The dogs of war are going to war. I think you're right. I don't think that we're going to be getting the live keynotes anymore. I think COVID kind of did away with that.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we commented on as we were watching it last night is just the pure production value that we're getting out of Apple right now. I mean, like, chances are, as ridiculous as it sounds, they probably filmed that with an iPhone, and then it was edited on Final Cut on one of these new absurdly incredible machines that we were debuted last night. I don't know, man. I'm kind of torn on this one. I'm on an M1, you're on an M1.
Yep.
And we were talking before we started that this is way more machine than I even know what to do with. And now the M3 is coming out, and it is way more of a machine than what I know what to do with. But boy, I would have fun doing nothing with it. I mean, it's a very impressive machine.
Pretty much. I mean, and I'm a huge tech nerd too, and I have been for the better part of 30 years. And when I see this kind of stuff, like first of all, like I kind of hinted at their short event, I was expecting a little bit more. I thought they were going to drop some new iPads as well, but I'm thinking, with them being able to do these pre-produced things, they can just drop stuff whenever they demo. Please, next month we might get some iPad stuff. But
also no mention of the Air.
No mention of the
everything was MacBook Pro last night,
right?
And the iMac.
And typically, like the Mac Mini and the MacBook Air is kind of where they test these things out first. They went straight for the Pro products in the iMac, which is nice as well. But
no studio
as well. So for me, like the best way I can kind of word it in simple terms before we get into the details is I was kind of like overwhelmed and underwhelmed at the exact same time.
Yeah,
overwhelmed by the specs, but just underwhelmed by just how like short and we only got a few things here. I think just to kind of wet our palate for there's more to come.
Well, I guess the biggest thing is we just had one of these events as well, right? Like that was maybe a month ago that we sat down and did one of these shows coming out of the iPhone 15 announcement.
Yeah, we did the watch along, which got taken down again. Thank you very much, YouTube.
But so rather than quarterly, are we going to start doing these monthly? Like, my God, what are we doing here, right? Like we both come from the wrestling world, right? And we complain that there's too much content. Like, I would kind of rather that they just did one big event quarterly rather than these little small announcements.
I've always been thought of you do four throughout the year. You have WWDC, you have your developer keynote, where you focus on the software. And then you have your iPhone event, then you have your iPad event, and then you have your Mac event. I think that's pretty simple.
Wait, this is 3 in 3 months, isn't it? Because didn't we have one 2 months ago for Sonoma?
Yeah, pretty much. And so I guess the type of thing where it's when, like, one of my big beefs with the video game industry, especially when it comes to sports games, is that they crank one out every single year. And we've seen, a couple of them have had to kind of back off of that. Most notably, like you said, I formerly from the wrestling world here, the WWE 2K game, was set aside for a year because the previous version was, for lack of a better term, shit.
But didn't they change developers too? Wasn't that part of the deal? They changed developers.
They changed developers as well, and but there's such a short turnaround for these things because we've gotten into that year cycle now. I think that Apple is smart enough to realize, hey, you know what? We've already got enough out there as it is. We can kind of back off a little bit, and wait till the stuff is ready, and then we'll just drop it when it's ready, as opposed to just trying to cram in there because we have to.
Well, and since the last time we spoke, right, they had debuted the iPhone 15, released it about a week later. Joe, do you know anybody with an iPhone 15 yet? Have you heard any in-person boots on the ground reports of the iPhone 15? Because I've heard a couple.
Yeah, I mean, for my day job, we do sell phones. I don't do it personally. Other people in my department do. I've had a chance to hold it in my hands as well. It's fantastic. It feels completely different than the previous models. Yeah, so far no complaints. Typically in my line of work, when we sell a phone and it kind of goes sideways, we hear about it right away. So yeah, so far so good. I mean, people loving those iPhone 15s, and I mean, it's a really cool thing to witness too, because I go to the Apple store quite a bit, and we're selling Apple stuff to people on a regular basis, unlike anything else like technology, because we sell game consoles and that kind of stuff too. But when people are there to buy an Apple product, they're just like, it's a different kind of feeling. People love physically. Like, there's people that would marry these devices if it was, socially acceptable to do so, right?
Well, the thing about Apple is you don't have to sell it, right? Like you can upsell somebody. You can upsell somebody from an Air to a MacBook Pro. You can upsell somebody into a better iMac, but the decision is already made before they walk in the store. I'm going with Apple. It's not something that just happens in store.
Absolutely. They're just as excited as your puppy is in the background right now. You can hear the nails on the floor. Like they're excited to go.
Hardwood floors are amazing until you get dogs, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, man, let's kind of get into what they talked about here. So, like you had said, most notably, kind of the lower end portable Macs didn't really get mentioned. We went straight for MacBook Pro right off the hop.
Yeah, and I guess probably one of the bigger takeaways for me is now we're going to start classifying MacBook Pro like we classify the phone. Like you've got your MacBook Pro M3, and then you've got the MacBook M3 Pro, and then you got the MacBook M3 Max, right? It's the iPhone Pro, and the iPhone Pro Max, right? I don't know. I'm kind of torn, man.
It feels like we're venturing, and I hate to say this, because I liked it when the product line was nice and kind of clean. We had one kind of thing of each, and then you could slightly spec out each individual thing if you want to, but I think especially if I'm selling all of these products under one roof, it's going to start getting a little tough. Like we're going to have like a chart or some kind of a visual aid for these salespeople to kind of just be able to break down the product line, because it's getting a little crowded. And
and especially once you bring the Air into things, I mean, we still have the M1s are going to be available.
Yeah, you get a lot of overlap between the low end MacBook Pro and the high end or the middle ground kind of MacBook Air. There's a lot of overlap in that product. You see it on the iPad side of things too, with especially the iPad Air and the iPad Pro, is they come very, very close to being essentially the same product. So it's becoming a bit of a crowded product line at this point.
I kind of wondered when they were starting this last night if the M3 was going to be the MacBook Air, and then the M3 Pro was going to be the standard MacBook Pro, and then the Max, but it didn't seem like that was the case. But without the MacBook Air announcement, that is kind of still lingering.
Yeah. So to kind of break down some of the numbers here, because this is the part that gets me all kind of giddy inside. We have to be critical at the same time as well. But let's look at some pretty cool positive here. I'm going to break down all three chips that were announced here, kind of just in general. So we're base level M3. This is the one that I really want to touch on this, because this is going to be the one for most people out there that if you're going out there to buy a new iMac or iPad Pro, see, I'm getting confused now too. MacBook Pro. This is what you're going to get. You're going to get an 8-core CPU, which I mean is already, that's pretty incredible. You're getting a 10-core GPU and up to 24 gigabytes of unified memory. That's on this is what you can go up to on the base level, which I mean that's already a very capable product.
Well, no, it's not go up to. This is the floor. This is the starting point, right?
Well, for the unified memory, you can go up to 24 gigabytes. The 8-core, the CPU and the GPU, that's what you get. You can't go higher or lower on that one. So then we bump up to the M3. So now we can go up to a 12-core CPU and up to an 18-core GPU. So we're getting up into high double digits with this kind of stuff here. And up to that one, we can go up to 36 gigabytes of unified memory. That's for those wondering what that is, that's the RAM, if we want to still call it that. But with this, it's all integrated into one chip. So that's if I'm doing my math correctly, that is 30 cores on the mid. The Pro is the mid level, which is interesting.
Right. Well,
now
and then the Max, which is just absurd.
So now we're getting into what I'm going to call the redonkulous category here, the M3 Max. We can go up to 16-core CPU. We can go up to, this is my favorite one, 40 cores on the GPU and up to 128 gigabytes of RAM of unified memory. That is a crowded chip on something that is essentially the size of your freaking fingernail. These are 3 nanometer chips, by the way, which is interesting because it is the M3. So there are the other manufacturers like Intel, Qualcomm. They're struggling to get down to 5 nanometers. Apple, with their engineering team, are down to 3 nanometers. That is we're up to, I believe, on the Max, I think we're up to 1 trillion transistors.
Yeah, we were looking at that last night. We were commenting as we were watching it, like, wait, how many transistors is that? And then it was just like, oh my god!
And he was saying like how many you can fit in just like one little spot where it's like millions, like in just like in a microscopic level. Like it's like this stuff is just mind blowing to me. You know, considering like where we first came with computers to see how things have kind of escalated. You know, my first computer being an old Mac, to now that these things are more powerful than like entire rooms of computers used to be.
Yeah, I had a Tandy color vision, let me tell you.
Like, God, man.
And I guess one of the bigger takeaways for me last night, and we commented on it as we were watching, they are really going after the gaming market.
Big time.
And as we were talking about the prices of these things off air, and it's just like, oh my God, it's absolutely absurd. We're talking $4,000.
Yeah.
And then I start thinking about like some of these custom gaming PCs that I see come into work. And it's like, that's actually pretty on par for what seems to be far superior machine.
Well, that's been one of the big ribs on the Mac for years, of those elite PC gamers, like to shit on the Mac, saying, "Oh, you can't play game stuff." I mean, you always have been able to a certain extent, but admittedly, the library has been relatively small for you. If you get Steam on the Mac, I mean, the list of games is a lot shorter than it is on the PC. But I mean, the things are going to get kind of on par here, or it might actually sway the other way, because I mean, these things.
I don't even think it's on par, man. I don't even think it's close.
Because like for those who want to say that the Macs aren't powerful enough to run games anymore, that is just not the case anymore.
Well, it's like as they were talking about it last night, and it's like, this is built for, if you're building a movie score, if you're editing a film, if you're doing DNA sequencing, if you're doing AI programming, or if you want to play Call of Duty. Like it's just absolutely absurd. And I guess my question is Apple in danger of becoming the Dreamcast? Do you remember the Dreamcast, Joe, the Sega Dreamcast from back in the day? It
was a very, I do remember I owned one near the end of its life cycle. I had one shortly before I went to the PlayStation, which was the PlayStation 2 at the time. It was a very, it was arguably the more powerful console at the time. It had some great sports games, by the way. The NFL game still stands up as one of the best to this day, but I mean, it had really shitty marketing with it. Sega was doing some really weird stuff at the time, and it was just one of those things where it's ended up in the graveyard of technology, unfortunately. But I mean, it was an impressive machine.
You're right on par with where I was going. I mean, when you had the PS2, you had the Xbox, and you had the Dreamcast. Yeah. And of the three, if you stack them up, the Dreamcast was the far superior machine to both the PS2 and the Xbox. Mm-hmm. But the biggest problem that I think the Dreamcast had, outside of the marketing, you're absolutely right on that. They didn't have developers. People were making games for the PlayStation 2. They were making games for the Xbox, and they were not paying any attention to the Dreamcast. Yeah. is Apple kind of in that danger? I mean, obviously, you're going to have your proprietary software. You're going to have Final Cut Pro. You're going to have Logic Pro. But are the developers going to be able to take advantage of this technology? Or are we going to have a far superior machine and we just can't do anything with it?
That's a really good point because actually last night I was actually watching. If you get a chance to watch it, it's absolutely fantastic. It was the movie on the BlackBerry. It's called BlackBerry, and great example there of a product that absolutely was killing it at the time. And then they even showed it on the movie when Steve dropped that new iPhone. BlackBerry was doomed to fail. And the other big thing, like you had hinted at there, was that they weren't able to attract the developers because they didn't bet on the right horse when it came to their operating system. They said they were going to do our own thing, but it just wasn't robust enough. And like I said, and Steve made a great point that it was a type of phone where the hardware was what it was, and that's why that all screen was such a game changer, because then you can make any interface that you wanted to. Whereas with the BlackBerry, it's fixed in plastic. You can't change it, even if you come up with a better idea further down the road. So similar kind of thing here. But I think that if they really want to jump into the games business, which clearly they are at this point, Apple Arcade, they definitely, hitting that casual. They make huge money on that. It's going to be attracting. If they're going to have to attract like a major developer. I don't know who it's going to be, but if they can come up with like a killer app, like if they can come up with like their Halo or their Uncharted or something like that, like something that's going to be able just on the Mac, then you're off to the races potentially. But it's going to be that's going to be the key thing, is you're going to have to attract that key developer that's going to get on board with you to make something that people are going to want.
And the other thing is, once you can drop the silicon chip, the M3 chip, into the Apple TV, all bets are off. Yeah. I mean, if I'm Microsoft or Sony, that is my biggest fear right now. If Apple can take this technology and put it into a console, then they're coming for both the PC market as well as the console market with iGame. And I mean, I keep running this iGame media campaign through my freaking head, and it's going to be incredible. And it just seems like every time one of these announcements comes, it's like, ooh, is this going to be it? No.
Right.
Ooh, is this going to be it? No.
They could potentially be a big disruptor there. And especially with some of the stuff kind of going on the game side of things. I mean, you have Mr. Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, saying that, next year, we're probably going to go, like when the next console comes out, it's going to be all digital. As of next year, Walmart is no longer going to carry physical Xbox discs. But then at the same time, that guy, I mean, great innovator in the business, but kind of a Yahoo at the same point. And in the next breath, he's saying, by 2025, if there's not enough people subscribing for Game Pass, we're just going to get out of gaming. Like the dude's, like, I don't know if he's like bipolar or something, but it just like he's just like all over the friggin' map. But I mean, clearly there's a transition to like all digital media when it comes to the gaming stuff. Nintendo is probably going to drop their next thing very, very soon. I suspect that will all be digital as well. I mean, myself, I do have a bit of a collection back here, but I mean, as of late, I did this on one of my blogs recently talking about digital media. I mean, with how we kind of live our lives now, I mean, it's such a better way to go about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love owning physical DVDs. Like for example, like, I still love my original Dawn of the Dead DVDs and stuff like that. But I mean, it's just too damn convenient the way that it's set up now. I can literally watch and play the stuff on wherever I want. When I want to play my PS5 stuff, I just hook up my iPhone to this puppy, and I can remote play my PS5 if I want. Right. But if I own the actual discs, you can't really do that. So, I've resisted that thought process for a long time, but I'm fully on board with it now because it's so damn convenient. And I think at Apple, that obviously that would definitely be the approach as well. And damn, with this horsepower, and we haven't even touched on the iMac yet, which we're both on. We're going to get to that. But I mean, we're the next couple of years here are going to be very interesting, not only computing wise, but gaming wise. If they can really make a good, serious push into that business, it could get very, very interesting.
And there's no reason for them not to. I mean, when you have this technology, I mean, you would think developers would be beating down the freaking door in order to get in on it, right?
The big thing is it going to attract that many customers, right? So you have to keep that in mind as well. Are a lot of people going to be getting these machines, and because that's one of my things when I think of this stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love looking at the numbers and nerding out to all the specs and that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a consumer, going, okay, all this horsepower is great, but what can I do with it?
Right.
Because we're gonna like we mentioned the numbers, like a 40 core GPU, great. But what can I do with it, right? So I feel like that stuff, like we're really kind of targeting the pro consumer. Like we're talking like people like us who like to create content, who like to produce stuff and kind of create. But for the average consumer, I'm thinking, the pro, especially like the Pro and the Max M3 chips, probably not going to register with like the average consumer. They're just going to go for the base level. And as I'm going through this too, I'm looking at the site, and the M1 iMac, not there anymore. So they're not keeping that as a base model. We're going right up to the 3, and that's that.
Well, and I guess that's a good segue to the iMac too, because if you're going to start reaching the PC gamer, I mean, even like the Mac M1, I think is a far superior machine to a lot of the higher end gaming PCs that I see come into work. But these M3s kind of blow them out of the freaking water, especially when you start upgrading these things. Joe, run them through the numbers.
It's interesting because to touch on that briefly, because like usually for the longest time, especially on the PC side of things, those integrated graphics type of things was always the type of thing. Well, cool, you can use that for regular productivity, but when it comes to games, integrated graphics was frankly a joke. But with this stuff here, man, I mean, it's well,
and with the ray tracing, like we're not even talking about some of the new software stuff that they're putting into these things.
Yeah.
But it looks like everything's even going to look smoother on the Max at 4.5K.
Yeah. So like an interesting thing here, because maybe I didn't pick up on this on the keynote because maybe they could have glazed over. Because like I said, it was only about 30 minutes. It was very, very short. I'm looking at the iMac lineup on apple.com/CA because I'm in Canada. For the iMacs, we only have the M3, the regular M3 on the iMacs. I am not seeing options for Pro and Max on the iMac side of things, unless I am doing something incorrect here. But you're basically just you're opting for there's a bit of a bump in the M3 itself, but I'm not seeing the actual Pro and the Max as an option for those.
As I think about it, didn't they say that the MacBooks were going to be available immediately? The lower end Macs are going to be, and the other ones, I don't think they're going to be available for like 6 weeks or so. Yeah. So they may not even be listed on the website as of us sitting down to record this.
I mean, you can order them now, but I think they ship a little bit later. Yeah, it's looking on the iMac side of things. You the regular M3 is your only choice, and then there's but you can bump up on the GPU cores, which I mean, not unexpected, because I mean
I'm on the website now too.
Because then what that leaves room for is something they haven't done in quite a while, and that's the iMac Pro.
Yeah,
because we know that's coming, and it's well, we don't know that's coming, but I mean that's I suspect, given that that's missing from that, because then why would you do an iMac Pro if you can just get that chip in the base level machine, right? So interesting.
Did you see that they fixed my biggest complaint about my Mac?
What was the
so my Mac only has 2 USB-C ports, and it drives me absolutely insane. New one, 2 USB 3 ports, as well as 2 Thunderbolt 4 USB ports.
So 4 ports standard on it is what you're saying. Yeah, that's cool, because I definitely mine only has 2 as well.
Drives me insane
for what I'm doing, because I'm not going quite as much as you are here, but for Joe's studio here, the 2 ports has been sufficient. I suspect I'll probably need a hub at some point, but I'll cross that bridge when
my single biggest complaint is my external hard drive. Because of my audio interface, I have to start unplugging stuff if I wanted to use Time Machine, because I can't run my external hard drive through a hub.
I want to touch on that briefly, because that's interesting that you mentioned that, because in this past week, I kind of ventured into that realm, deciding to get an external storage. That's where I'm going to store all my recordings on. This is pretty insane to me. This is just kind of a nerd out moment with me. I bought a 2 terabyte solid state drive, and this is the size of it. It's 2 terabytes, dude.
Absurd.
It's like it's like a. I've eaten cookies smaller than this. Like it's absolutely insane to me. But yeah, if you're watching this program, the recording is stored on something this size.
4 terabytes,
and it's snappy. It's a solid state USB-C solid state. I got it for a really good price, good price too, by the way. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that as well, because adding external storage for these type of things is a must, kind of, if you're doing the kind of stuff that we're doing. But yeah, I mean, it was cool to see a little bit of a bump in the iMac. I was worried for a second that they weren't going to do it, and then thankfully they did. But yeah, they're definitely leaving room for an iMac Pro, and I know especially people like our friend Mr. Stevie Richards will definitely be probably having an eye on something like that.
Well, I guess my question is, would they do the iMac Pro, or would they just use the Studio? I mean, has the Studio kind of replaced the iMac Pro at this point?
I don't think so, because that's more of like a setup of where you want to have like multiple of those, like if you're in like a production farm type of thing, like if you're Pixar or something like that. I think, you know, like your home pro that really wants to kick things up a notch, an all-in-one type of thing like that with those kind of specs. Yeah. I mean, if I had the money, I'd be sticking my foot in that.
That's fair.
And you know, be running up to I think at the max, I think we saw you could run as much as 4
monitors,
8K monitors off of that, which is the concept of that is I can't really wrap my head around that. You can run 4 8K monitors off of one unit.
Well, the 120 unified gig of RAM. I mean,
the amount of pixels that you're pushing there is just ridiculous, man. Because like not only the screen that you're on, and then the 4 displays. I mean, just it's incredible, man.
If you pair that with the Apple Vision Pro, you can become Tony Stark.
And that's the thing with the Vision Pro. It's like, I think if you're gonna dip your foot into the Apple Vision Pro, that's gonna be your only thing. You can't do this and the Vision Pro. I mean, it's especially at the price Canadian. I mean, they haven't even posted on the site yet. I mean, the Canadian is gonna be ridiculous.
Yeah, but can you imagine, like, okay, you brought up like basketball, right? Or football, the 2K series, right? Yeah. So let's say that they actually get the Madden developers to start making, you know, Madden built for the M3, actually taking full advantage of all the capabilities of this thing, and then you put on an Apple Vision Pro, and use that as your monitor while you're playing. I mean, that's full immersion, and at that many pixels.
It's gonna be really interesting because, and then too, like on the other content side of things, because with Apple TV Plus, when we're already doing Major League Baseball, we're already doing Major League Soccer. I mean, they could get on board with other sports as well. I know this one will interest you as well. I would love to see Formula One team up with Apple, because then you can use your artificial intelligence to break down stats and everything. And that's one of the really cool things when you watch Major League Baseball on Apple TV Plus. First of all, no commercials, which is absolutely fucking amazing. You get a breakdown, like literally as the at bats are happening. It's like, so this guy has a certain percentage chance of getting on base. He has this percentage chance of being struck out. Like just the AI and everything kind of going on that is absolutely insane. And if you watch as well, you'll notice that the reporters are even wearing the same headphones that I'm wearing. I mean, it's truly incredible, and I would love to see them dabble more into other sports like that, because then you add even more value to that Apple TV Plus, which has gotten a lot better.
So you mentioned Formula One, and I'm a Formula One nerd, right? And I'm just imagining watching Formula One through the Apple Vision Pro, and oh my God,
would that be enough to sell you on it?
Yes.
Yeah.
If it came with a subscription to Sky Sports. So as a Formula One nerd that lives in the United States, this is absolutely absurd to me. But if you are a Sky Sports subscriber in the UK, you can actually get onboards for every individual driver
That's crazy.
as well as their team radio.
Yeah.
And with no commentary. So if you put on that Apple Vision Pro and you're listening to just the radio and you have that spectrum of view, I mean, they already basically have GoPros on top of the car.
Yep.
They have them built into their helmets. They have them built into the front wing. I mean, you could actually think that you were Lewis Hamilton for, 57 laps, chasing Max Verstappen around the freaking track. I mean, that would be complete immersion. That would be so scary. Oh my God.
If they could get on board, like go do like all the major racing events, like do the Indianapolis 500, do the Daytona 500, for the dirt, go to Springer's, go to Knoxville or something like that. For if you really want to step things up a notch, I mean, do the 24 Hours of Le Mans, right? Because I mean, that's where the best race car drivers in the world race against each other in multiple divisions. I mean, that's the type of thing too. You can find actually the most recent one on YouTube, the entire thing. Go watch it. Absolutely fantastic.
It's like 26 hours.
It's an entire day broadcast. It's 26 hours long. But absolutely incredible. I would love to see Apple dabble more into that stuff, just to bring even more value to that Apple TV Plus. Which I mean,
I'm just trying to imagine Lewis Hamilton in Monaco when you're on the onboard for an hour and a half. You would probably have to change your pants when you were done.
That'd be pretty sweet. I'd be down for that as well. So yeah, man, some cool stuff announced there. Like I said, really, really cool. But I was expecting a little bit more like quantity wise. But I think this time you can make the argument that we definitely went, and I'm okay with this approach because I've always been a proponent of this approach, quality over quantity. And I think that's kind of what they decided to go with here. That we're going to give you a couple really, really cool things, and then just kind of wet your palate, because I suspect that we're going to get more again before the end of the year. And I will go as far as saying that what I think we're going to get in the November event is we're going to get a new iPad mini. We're going to get a new base level iPad. We'll see if they still keep the 9th generation around, because I know that the schools really love the 9th generation, and that's a big market for them. And then I'll say it again, bring out a cheaper version of these for your customers as well. That's what I'm going to predict. I'm going to predict new iPads and a new, slightly more affordable version of these babies right here.
It'll be interesting, man, because look, we weren't expecting this event until spring. Everything that we kept hearing was, it's going to be spring before they debut the new iMacs, and here we are at October 31st. Happy New Year, So it's going to be interesting and very, very terrifying if you are a credit card inside of my wallet.
For sure. One thing I want to touch on just briefly, I think we'll end off with this, because we had mentioned with looking like Apple's going to be doing these pre-produced things going forward. I am a fan of them. At the same time, too, I do miss that personal touch of the in-person keynote, because I mean, there are other companies are doing them again. I mean, Google, Facebook's Meta, whatever you want to call them, they're back to doing in-person keynotes. I think that when it comes to these, I would still like to see Apple do at least one of these kind of things. And I think that the one that you do that for is WWDC. You bring in your developers into the Steve Jobs Theater and you do like an actual in-person keynote to them, because especially as we're talking about software. And I mean, you send all the emails out and you get everybody to come to California for at least one keynote a year, I think.
And I think people would be knocking down the doors.
Oh, if I was invited, I'd go.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. All right, man. I guess that about wraps up here for this time. We'll see if next month, if we get together to come together again. I suspect we probably will, but we'll see. But in the meantime, dude, before we head out, where can people find you these days?
I'm across social media at Not Jargo, although chances are I am not going to talk to you because I don't really get on social media anymore, and it's absolutely amazing. So if you're looking for somebody to talk to, why don't you go over to x.com, hit up the vet at Opinion Haver. He will be more than happy to sit down and discuss anything to your wild heart's desire.
And as always, when I have Mr. Michael Jargo on the program, I will let him send us off in style.
We're off like a prom dress. See ya!
HTM Tech is brought to you by Microplay, located at 265 King George Road in Brantford, Ontario, Canada, for all of your video game and collectible needs.